this is our government, the president. I could expect maybe the Secretary of State or something, but the president.
A couple days before Nixon resigned, we took our children down to meet him after work, and we were behind the White House, and we saw a limo come out, and in it was Pat Nixon and President Nixon, and he just seemed so pale. They both looked so white to us.
Throughout that, then, you couldn't help but pay attention to what was going on in the Washington Post.
Throughout the height of the Watergate scandal, it was the Washington Post articles by Woodford and Bernstein that kept the public up to date with the latest breaking news.
I remember in our very middle-class neighborhood that people really couldn't wait for the Washington Post to get there to see what stories and names and things were going to be exposed.
It was just a very strong feature of every day. We wanted to get the Washington Post and read all of the articles about the evolving Watergate situation.
And it was everyday news. I mean, it was on the Post, radio, and all that.
It was, in a sense, it was an exciting time when it was very, very important to see the Washington Post every morning and to scour it for articles about that, see what development was going to become known today.
Never was the freedom of the press so important as when it was the determining factor that gave the public the truth about the corrupt and lying government under Nixon. However, Watergate meant more to those living in Washington, D.C. in the 1970s than a series of well-written articles. Many D.C. residents were taught to distrust the government through their own experiences, and some saw events unfold with their own eyes.
Vietnam in 1966, and that was the first time that either of us realized that there was any dishonesty in the government. Everything was hush-hush. What the papers were saying and the word that was out was just not what he experienced.
It would not be unusual. We were working in the executive office building across from the White House, and we had a view of K Street, for example, where many of the lawyers and other officials who were mentioned in the press could be seen going in and out of limousines and in and out of buildings on K Street at that time. And it would not be unusual for myself and colleagues to stand by the window at lunchtime and see if we could detect any of those notables.
Jack Brennan was the Marine Corps aide to President Nixon, who became Nixon's post-resignation chief of staff.
Jack and his wife Pat lived right across the street from us. And so on the, what was the Saturday massacre, we were up at Camp David. And we were staying in the some of the little cabins that were set aside for the newspaper people. And we were sitting around the fire, and I guess about 9 o'clock there was a knock on the door. And I answered the door. Jack Brennan here? And I said, yeah, Jack, and he went out. And when he came back, and he said, I have to leave right now.
It was a very, you really had the feeling that you were living history, and you wanted to be aware of everything as it happened.
Well, again, Tom being good friends with Jack, and me being good friends with Jack's wife, eventually, the next week when everything started coming out, then he told us that was what had happened, and that Nixon wanted him back. Nixon thought very highly of Jack. From that point on, Jack and Pat were very closed-mouthed, but we knew that things were going on.
Although the crimes of Watergate were extensive, it was the cover-up that really frayed people's trust in the government.
So I wouldn't say he was a crook. And I never did mistrust him from the beginning. I thought he was the president, and, that's the way it was.
It gave people outside the government thinking, wow, what was going on, that this president was trying to obstruct justice. And I think that really affected a lot of people, that our president would try to do that rather than have the truth come out about what he had done and the extent of what he had done and the cover up.
We get into a situation where compromise is not possible, and a lot of that, I think, evolved out of the distrust of government that was the result of the Watergate affair. Previous to that period, it was unthinkable that the president would be untrustworthy. It was just assumed that we had someone that we could rely on to be trustworthy whenever any development occurred. We were able to believe him. Nixon's behavior really did a lot of damage to that underlying trust.
Never, to this day, has criticized Nixon for anything that he did. And so, caring about Jack, as we had for 20 years, it was hard to believe that he could have such faith in a man without becoming somewhat jaded.
Before Watergate, the government seemed like something untouchable that could do no wrong. When Woodward and Bernstein began to uncover the truth about the dirty tricks that were happening in Nixon's administration, they brought with them a level of government transparency that the media has maintained since then.
But the good old days, I can't begin to tell you how we looked up to the leaders and how we believed that they were. You think back with the Pentagon Papers, everybody was just outraged. How dare somebody reveal these secrets? And yet now, the entire public thinks that they have the right to know everything.